Hello, what I'm going to do today is look at one section of the urban topic, which is 2A, urban growth creates opportunities and challenges for cities and LICs and NEEs, or low-income countries and newly emerging economies. So if we go to the 2A tab, as you can see, we're going to look at Rio as our case study for this in Brazil. And a case study means that all the questions which require a case study, you need to really talk about this place and use specifics. You can't talk generally about a place. So you need to have figures and place names. First thing we have to look at is the location. This is really straightforward in the sense that you just need to know where this place is. If I click on the Google location link, it'll take you to Rio and show you exactly where it is, and you've got a little description on the Google Doc. I suggest that you have an explore of the city. You might want to actually look around using Street View, which is this here. And the better you get to know this city and the place names and the areas, the better your understanding. So like it says on there, it's on Brazil's Atlantic coast. We're in South America. You've got the longitude and latitude, 23 degrees north and 43 degrees west. And it's built around Guanabara Bay. And the whole idea is that you make sure you can do longitude and latitude and make sure you have an understanding on how to find that. If you don't, then you have a look on the web and you'll find all sorts of help files on how to look at and use longitude and latitude. Just something underneath there, just a tiny amount of background which can be applied later, but it is seen as the cultural capital of Brazil. It's got huge tourist attractions and important cultural sites like the Christ Redeemer. They've got different zones. If you look in your textbook, there's a map which divides the whole city into these different zones, like the northern zone, which is really industrial. But it's worth knowing that, so if you get a question later about the importance of Rio, you know, in terms of industry, a lot of that is in the north. But also you'll see down here, you've also got the west zone has some large steel industries. So if you look at employment, just mentioning the steel industries in the west zone, straight away you're being specific. So the more you know about this city for all of the questions in terms of place names and where things are, the better. In terms of its importance, which is the next little section you have to look at, so if we go to our content sheet, we've got location there. The next little bit is the importance of the city. But you've got to look at this on three different scales. You've got internationally, so why is it important to the globe, to different countries? Nationally, so why is it important to Brazil? Regionally, why is it important to the area in and around the city itself, the region? Now you can use similar ideas for each of these. So if you look at the international part on the table here, it emphasizes the links with other countries. So for example, it's one of the most visited cities. And clearly nationals visit the area as well, but I'm emphasizing for the whole of the southern hemisphere. People come from all over the world to see these sites. It's also seen as nationally as the cultural capital of Brazil. But for the international bit, you need to emphasize international links like the Olympic Games, which is the one underneath. The national links, if you look at this bit, it's talking about how it's Brazil setting the most important industrial center. And then it's given this just one figure, specific, 5% of Brazil's output. It's named the industries there. It's very specific. So as long as you can explain, like the question above it shows, explain the importance both internationally, nationally, and regionally. I would have maybe 2 ideas in each one, but if you're clever about it, you'll overlap them so you don't need to remember too much. Because clearly, if it's important educationally for the whole nation, it's also going to be important to the region. The next little bit are why it's growing. So the causes of growth, you've got 2 ideas there, but we've got to be specific again. So in the previous doc, we looked at urban change and the urban patterns around these low-income countries and high-income countries, and we looked at factors affecting the rate of urbanization. It's exactly the same thing, this, to explain what's going on in Rio. It's a newly emerging economy, so these big cities are attracting people from the rural area for jobs and so on. So what's happening here, just like in other big cities in the newly emerging economies, is the rural poverty is driving people away from the rural areas, the push factors, and the pull factors in the urban areas, such as the jobs. A lot of it's perception, but the perceived jobs, the educational opportunities, the universities and so on, and all the schools. You've got health opportunities, and you can make a life for yourself here. But what you've got to do within that is talk about, okay, well, that's added to the growth, but then make it specific. So 65% of the urban growth at the moment is down to migration. Just putting a figure in like that straight away transforms the answers being something very general, which is stuck in level 1, to something specific. And then once these people move in, they tend to be very young. So the chances are that, well, many of them will have children, which means the natural increase is going to be higher, because natural increase is birth rates minus death rates. So birth rates are going to be high. Equally, a young population has a lower death rate. So therefore, the natural increase will be high, because if birth rates are high and death rates are low, the population will go through natural increase as well. So both of them are working, but migration possibly being the root cause. Again, there's some information here on the 2 links, your textbook and a little article there. So the last little bit we need to look at here is how the growth is creating opportunities. The key idea here is all these people living and working together does create opportunities to create a healthcare system for everybody and an education for everybody, and also jobs for everybody. In rural areas, for instance, if you wanted to build schools and educate everybody, if they're all scattered over vast areas, it's very difficult to get decent schools to all those areas, because it's not worth, or even universities, if you've got populations of less than 100 in and around a village, it's very difficult to run a secondary school or even a primary school. So what we need to do is divide this down into social and economic opportunities. And I've modelled here how to make notes. But I haven't finished them for you because some of this is obviously your job. So social opportunities is enabling people to live fulfilling and productive lives. That's the idea behind it. So if we do words in red are these words which you can use to lift your answers to make better explanations and better assessments. So RIA's growth has significantly improved social opportunities because more people have improved access to health, education, energy, water and income. If I got a question asking me how to explain how Rio has improved the social opportunities of people, I might start like that because that gives me a way into my answer. If it's particularly if it's an assessment, because if it asks me to assess, I might go on to say, however, there are some limitations here, depending on the question. So if we're doing education, one of the most significant areas of education is it provides an education opportunity for all, mostly anyway. I said say all, like it says there, 95% literacy rate. So in terms of education, compared with the rural areas, you've got a 95% literacy rate compared with 70% in the rural areas. So nearly everybody gets at least a primary education in Rio, which is not the case in rural areas. And you could embellish that in terms of what that would mean to people over time. It's not just jobs, which do come along with that and the chance of building your way out of poverty, but it's all the other things that come with being able to read. For example, access to books, websites, advice, being able to read medicines and understand them, and so on. But also, and it's additionally, I don't think it's the most fundamental thing, but additionally, you've got higher education as well, because a big centralized population, which means lots of people living together, means you can support universities, and there are 6 universities. There's an example there, again, trying to be specific, Real State University. And it's also got Brazil's National Library situated here, which is obviously going to improve education further, access to journals, academic papers and books. So your job is to make sure you can explain each of the bits on the spec. So social, you've got education and health, water supply and energy supply. And then for economic, you've got to show how the urban areas have stimulated economic development. For that bit, I've given you a little introduction here, and I'd just like to think about what these are and how these have been created by these industrial areas. So, for example, the formal jobs are ones which should paying tax. They're within they're legal. So, for example, working in a factory, in a steel mill, you bring in wage, you'll pay tax, you'll be health and safety laws around you. Informal jobs are jobs that the government doesn't know about. Now, these are not taxed, right from begging on the street to shoe shining to becoming guides for tourists and so on. A lot of students actually skype school to do that, to make some money, particularly during the Olympic Games. But it all stimulates the economy, which is the point. And what I've done down here is provided some reading material on each of these, so you can read a little bit further on them. But then you need to create your own notes, which really hammer the explanation. So how have these cities created these economic opportunities? How does urban industrial areas stimulate economic growth? How is it doing it? Oh, it's creating jobs. When people have got jobs, they have more money, they spend more money. That means other businesses do well out of them. So, as I say, you need to make sure you've got a set of notes on these opportunities modelled on these examples at the top. And as I say, there's some web links down here and links to your textbooks and so on as well.